For thousands of years, people have had to have a way of storing raw meat for long periods of time without refrigeration. We've only had refrigeration for a little over a century. There were different methods they used to do this, and one of them was called the raw pack method. Literally, you could have raw meat sit on the shelf in a jar at room temperature for a couple of years and still be good. This is because the oxygen is taken out of it and there's nothing to spoil the meat. We start with a pressure canner, some quart-sized mason jars, and we've first boiled the tops and the lids in hot water to sanitize them. Now we just add 3 quarts of hot water to the pressure canner. Now we take the pieces of chicken and press them down into the quart jars where there's just 1 inch of space between the chicken and the top of the jar. The way we've cut this chicken is ideal for stews and to make fajitas. We have now taken the jars and added about 1/4 of the way up with water so as to make more of a broth. The only kind of salt you should use when canning is specified canning salt, as other salts will cause problems with the food. Now we're making adjustments to the water levels. It's not necessary to pour the water all the way to the top, as the chicken will end up making its own broth in the jar and basting its own juices. Once again, you wipe the jars down just to make sure there's nothing between the lid and the jar, or else you'll ruin the seal and the food will spoil very quickly. You now take your sterilized lids and place them on the top securely and fasten them with the rings. Then place the jars inside the canner on top of the rack, making sure that none of the jars touch one another. Then fasten the lid on securely and click it tight. Then set the stove on high as you want it to come to a boil quickly. About 10 minutes for the water to start boiling and start steaming, and when it does you set it for another 10 minutes at 10 pounds of pressure on the canner. And then when that steadies out, you set it for 90 minutes to make sure it's steady, and in 90 minutes you'll have the cooked chicken. And they claim it has at least a 2-year shelf life, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less, but you can tell when you open something if the meat's good or not. Chicken's not the only thing you can use. You can use raw meat of just about any type. They have different specs on what kind of food that you use. Winner, chicken dinner.